Hello and welcome to the breakout session in the Break1, the SOC and the NOC layer. My name is Sandro Hertz and I'm the EMEA Sales Director for Next Generation Solutions Division, which focuses on cybersecurity solutions delivered from the cloud. We are joined by 4 vendors today with leading technology for this topic, and I'm very excited that the subject matter experts from Anomaly, from AttackIQ, from CrowdStrike, from Ruckus, are here in this breakout room to give us their view, their insights, and their perspective on this SOC and NOC layer topic. We're having a very packed agenda, so let's get right into it. And I will just give the stage to Alex Beatty and Party Sanger from our value partner Anomaly.
Very much. Hopefully you can hear me okay. And good morning, good afternoon if you're out in continental Europe, of course, or elsewhere in the world. So my name's Alex Beatty. I'm a sales director with Anomaly. I've been with Anomaly for approximately 5 years. I'm joined by Parthy Sankar, who's our lead solutions engineer across Northern Europe. And we're going to talk a little bit about Anomaly and hopefully give you some eyes on a very brief view of the platform and some of its capabilities. So for those of you that are less familiar with Anomaly, we are the market leader in intelligence-driven cybersecurity, looking at this from a threat intelligence perspective, or certainly very well known in the TIP space, so threat intelligence platforms, and increasingly looking to support our customers in intelligence-driven XDR, or the extended detection and response arena. So as a business, we number about 300 people worldwide, and it's approximately a 10-year-old company. And let me get into the meat of this, some slides for you just before we kick off with Parthy's demo. So in terms of some of the challenges or the problem areas that we're typically hearing about, that we're seeing in the market, there is a huge amount of threat data, information, and threat intelligence that's out there. All of our customers, large enterprise customers, are looking to collect as much of this as possible, but they're looking to really kind of filter down and work with only the active, malicious, and high confidence information. So it's about trying to wrap your arms around as much intelligence and data as possible, but then condense it down to what's relevant to your organization based on where you operate in the world, and similar. Also, there's this concept that there are lots of vendors out there that are producing good quality information, threat research that you might want to leverage. All of this basically needs to be centralized in one platform, made machine readable, normalized, deduplicated, and enriched with context, so that basically the analysts within a SOC environment or a threat intelligence function can work with a single pane of glass with everything they need centralized within the platform. Then we come across this interesting challenge whereby many mature organizations are looking to distribute or orchestrate threat data and intelligence to a number of different security controls. It could be that you want to send a subset of IOCs to a SIM technology, to your EDR, to a firewall to automatically block. And what Anomaly does, and its bread and butter really, is in the strength of a vast amount of turnkey integrations. That means that a customer can distribute relevant high quality threat intelligence to any number of tools that they need to. And that better optimizes those tools. It increases the return on the value that those customers have invested in that SIM technology, in that EDR, for example. There's a lot of features and functionality within a threat management platform or a TIP. You would expect to find an investigations workbench, so an analyst can one-click, research and pivot an IOC, hopefully start to kick off an investigation, maybe attribute observables or IOCs to a threat actor group that they're particularly concerned with, for example. We also see there is a massive challenge related to the volume of the telemetry and the volume of the threat intelligence out there. And Anomaly's stance increasingly in terms of enabling intelligence-driven XDR is to take all of the telemetry available from the organization and match that at speed and scale against the hundreds of millions, potentially close to 1 billion IOCs, and do that in real time, and also enable a historical view so that our customers can threat hunt for out to 2 years, or maybe retrospectively threat hunt out to 5 years in certain instances. So there's some really interesting use cases developing around how you're able to leverage all of the threat intelligence available to you and all of the telemetry that you can make available without the usual challenges around volume of data and the licensing that can come with that. And sometimes that historical threat hunting or detection and response capability results in the ability to start to locate patient zero. So some information that the customer has received in the last minute, they can quickly check through, has my organization been affected in the last 5 years? If not, then fantastic, they can move on and monitor in real time. But if yes, they can start to determine, okay, we first saw this in our systems, in our network, or matched with any of our assets back in January 2020, and we may have a real problem here, something that's lying dormant, maybe starting to look to move laterally. But detecting patient zero is key. And there are many other sort of requirements or interesting use cases that we cater to. For example, we see a lot of appetite for like-minded organizations to share threat intelligence with one another in a meaningful and secure way. And within the Anomaly platform, we have the concept of trusted circles. We've got hundreds of enterprise customers that club together, maybe by country, on a country basis, or maybe by vertical. So, within the aviation space, there are several customers that would collaborate and share intelligence with one another. Equally, you might find that a large number of Dutch or UK or Irish organizations would club together with that natural affinity for geography, just to share meaningful and relevant threat intelligence with one another, and all that can be done within the Anomaly platform. So what Pathy is going to give you sight of are the core components that make up the Anomaly platform. The first being Threat Stream, and Threat Stream is the most widely adopted of the threat intelligence platform technologies out there. Threat Stream is where you would centralize everything intelligence related, and it would underpin and act as the foundation of your intelligence-driven cybersecurity initiatives. Anomaly Lens is an analyst tool, very simple for us to demo, very powerful. Anything rendered in a browser, you can scan with Lens, and it will just highlight and lift off the page what you're looking at. So this IOC that you've scanned, is it a command and control or APT domain or IP, and what's the confidence level, so on and so forth. It also uses natural language processing so that you can highlight more strategic content. So it will highlight threat actor groups or MITRE attack techniques, and it will give you that context, and then you can pivot into Threat Stream for a number of actions you might want to take there. And Match is this big data threat hunting engine that leverages all of the telemetry that you can make available to it, and all of the threat intelligence that you can make available to it in a way that typical security tools are quite restricted by volume. Match has been purpose-built to remove that challenge around volume of data. So a final slide from me, just to say that Anomaly sits at the center of a large ecosystem where we have a great number of integrations that need to work seamlessly out of the box. So there are sources or feeds of threat data and intelligence that sit upstream to the Anomaly platform, and they can, at the click of a button, be enabled and brought into the platform and centralized and deduplicated, normalized, made machine readable in an automated way. Equally, there are a number of vendors out there that provide great context on, for example, threat actor groups or vulnerabilities or indicators of compromise. And those can be enabled within the platform equally so that the analyst doesn't have to pivot to a number of different screens to gain the context. They can just click a button and anything they're looking at is automatically enriched within the single pane of glass. And then we talked about the distribution, the integration of threat intelligence or threat data with a number of security controls or tools where that would make sense. By the way, guys, just to be clear, this is a very small subset of the available integrations, just some very prevalent logos that you'll be familiar with. But essentially, just to say that this is a core requirement that we see from our customers, this ability to bring in data and intelligence from anywhere, and then the ability to send to a logical destination a filtered subset of high fidelity, high confidence data and intelligence to better optimize those tools. So I'm going to pause there and I'm going to stop sharing my screen to enable Parthy to take up where I've left off.
Hello everyone. My name is Parthy Sankar. I'm a lead solutions engineer for Anomaly covering Northern Europe. And this part of the demonstration, I'm going to carry out an intelligence-driven XDR use case using the Anomaly solutions. As Alex had mentioned, the solutions include Anomaly threat stream, a repository of threat intelligence that's curated, Anomaly match that carries out the threat detection, the historical relevance of the threat intelligence within your environment, and Anomaly Lens, which is a web application that sits on your browser to help speed up workflow. So looking firstly at the Anomaly threat stream element, where data is coming in from multiple different disparate sources, we collect agnostically. We retain the information that's curated within our platform. We make it available within our user interface, outside our user interface, and we're able to also send that across to your security controls, so they may be able to take advantage of the threat intelligence for blocking and monitoring purposes. And of course, Anomaly Threat Stream also feeds Anomaly Lens, Anomaly Match. Anomaly Match is our threat detection solution that has access to all of the threat intelligence. It has access to the metadata from your logs, which would be coming from the systems that you keep from your endpoint solutions all the way up through your security stack to your cloud systems, and it will be able to tell you if any of your assets have communicated with external threats. And we're able to also tell you which assets they are. So looking firstly at these two and running through an intelligence-driven XDR use case, if I come back into the platform, and I'm in Anomaly Threat Stream, and I'm first going to go to what we call the threat model sections. We house the data as either strategic reports or of technical indicators at a high level. So I'm in the strategic reports, and I've run a query, and for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to be a financial services. I'm going to be a bank in the Middle East. So here we have a straightforward query that's looking for threats that target that geo and that vertical, particularly threat actors. We have strategic reports which cover a whole different range of threat categories, from actors all the way down to malware, TTPs, micro attack, vulnerabilities, etc. So here we can see that oil rig seems to pop up quite a lot as being quite prevalent in targeting companies like mine. So if I click on one of these profiles over here, I can sort of drill down into the strategic report. This strategic report has sort of summarized the industries that is affected, such as financial services, the different countries, so focus on the Middle Eastern regions, but not exclusively. And we have the content of the report, which is intelligence driven. But I may be interested to understand, one, if I've been impacted already by this threat actor group, and two, how I can help my organization to make myself sort of sturdier to protecting against the techniques that they use. So here we have the associated observables. So this is automatically carried out within on the threat stream. So the obvious question is, have we seen any of these observables, these technical indicators, these domains, URLs, file hashes, etc. within my environment? This is where we pivot into anomaly match. So anomaly match keeps data from your environment, the metadata from your logs for up to 5 years. And here we can easily ask the question, have we been affected by a particular threat entity? So the PIR, the intelligence requirement, has led us to look at OilRig, and we can indeed see that OilRig has been seen in our environment. So I've clicked on this to see the underlying data. So now we're going to look at the correlation activity that has occurred over time. And as I scroll down, I can see 2 IP addresses that belong to my organization. They're connected to this technical indicator that is attributed to OilRig. We can see that it's an allowed connection. And if I click on the 3 dots, then we have the asset details. So I can see that this asset is actually considered critical. It's located in a corporate environment. Now we have the evidence trail to be able to go to the product or the service owner for this asset to ask them to carry out some remediation work. As you all might know quite well, it's difficult to take something offline or even to request a scan from being done. So you need to come up with a wealth of evidence to sort of back up why that activity needs to occur, and you have that through this intelligence-driven approach over here. So we've seen the impact of this particular asset in terms of communicating to a technical indicator that is attributed to a threat actor profile, where the intelligence derived shows that it targets companies just like yours. Now, the other aspect, as well as looking to see if you've been impacted to prevent a breach or any further activity, is to look at the attack patterns, the MITRE attack patterns, to look at the techniques and to understand if you're able to protect yourself against these techniques. So the quickest way here is to push this into investigation within anomaly threat stream. So I click on create new investigation. We can serialize it and give it a name. So I'm going to call this PIR, company name, my 26th investigation. Yeah. Now, if I click on create, it's going to place this particular threat actor profile into an investigation and allow me to carry out certain functions. So I want to extrapolate the attack patterns and look at the techniques. We're also able to look at, for example, the malware, the tools, and other things that this particular threat actor uses. So it's popped it here in the middle, and it'll automatically bring out the attack patterns. But if I wanted to, with a right click, I can click on search associations and show me everything or other subsets, for example, malware, tools, vulnerabilities. Now that we have the attack patterns, if I click on show models, it's going to lay out the attack patterns in a table format. So these are all the attack patterns used by this particular group. Now, what I'm interested in is to see the likelihood of these type of techniques which could impact our organization. So I click on this switch, which places the security coverage. So earlier on in the project of having anomaly, you'll place the security controls that you have against these MITRE attack patterns. And now we're able to overlay it. And so we can see that anything that's in deep red is highest risk because we don't have the security controls to help us protect us against these techniques. Everything at the lower shade is low risk because we have sufficient controls to consider this as low risk techniques, as those security controls are able to counter that. So this then sets off if you like, a project to understand how you can utilize your existing security controls to help you against these other techniques, or indeed think about acquiring other solutions which will help you here, because you know that these techniques are relevant to your organization. So in summary of this short demonstration, which utilizes anomaly, threat stream, and anomaly match so far, we're able to look at, using intelligence-driven approach, threat actor profiles, which are of highest risk to your organization, have a look to see if you've been impacted already by the technical indicators, and look to see how you can sort of be more proactive by looking at the techniques they used. And finally, just before I end, I would like to mention that we have Anomaly Lens, which is a web application that sits in your browser and helps you speed up workflow. So you can scan any page that's rendered on a web browser, on Outlook clients, Microsoft Word, Excel documents, PDF files, and it will essentially read the page for you and really speed up the time to understand what's on the page. So it's going to go through everything that's on the page, and it's going to summarize all of the different threats which have been picked up on the page, threat terms, categorizes it in different ways by threat actors, malware, CVEs, domains, etc. Tells us if there are any unknowns, giving us the opportunity to import them to make them known. The ones which we have information on, and provide data at our fingertips that's brought back from anomaly threat stream, and even if it's been seen in the environment by cross-checking with anomaly match. So here we see that there are a number of items on this page, including this domain that's referenced, that has been detected within the anomaly match XDR solution. You can see it's a high confidence, high severity level, and it's been classified as a malware domain. And by clicking on this, it takes us into anomaly match, and it's able to recall the correlations. So anomaly match is able to correlate back and forth with all the data that it has from your environment, with all the threat intelligence that's available to it, anomaly threat stream, and keeps that record and everything in hot storage. And we're simply recalling these correlations now. And here we'll see the different systems or system in our environment that is connected to this domain, which we just identified literally a few seconds ago and used Anomaly Lens to be able to get us to this quick point, this quick reference point. And you can see the connections over time, which takes us back to a couple of months ago in this particular instance. So this is the end of my demo. If you have any further questions, please do feel free to reach out to Alex or I. Here you can see our emails on screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex and Party. A really great overview about detection response and also about the Anomaly platform. Thanks a lot. As Party said, if there are any questions, just reach out to the presenters or to us. We collect all the questions during the chat. So very happy to have the next speaker, our good old friend Ross Brewer from TechIQ. Very happy to hear again something new, exciting from you, Ross. So your stage.
Great, thank you very much. And I want to sort of keep to the 20 minutes here, hopefully, if we can. So thank you, WestCon, and thank you, everybody, for attending these sessions, especially virtual, especially under the history of what we've been doing over the last couple of years. My name's Ross Brewer. I'm the Vice President and General Manager for TechIQ's Europe, Middle East, and Africa business, Asia Pacific, and Japan. Been in cybersecurity for coming up 30 years and love the business and love the constant change. And with that being said, just want to start off with a question. How do your customers measure their cybersecurity effectiveness? Now, if you can help your customers answer that question, that can unlock a lot of opportunity for partners. So let's take a look at that. So when we're working with CISOs and they tell us that their teams are sort of struggling with the constant barrage of new sort of vulnerabilities and exploits and breach announcements. And this sort of is interesting because, if you take Log4j at Christmas, everyone's sort of 4-6 weeks all running around in circles, when in fact the reality is that in only 3% of breaches, according to Verizon, the breach was actually a result of a vulnerability exploitation. However, organizations buy a bunch of magic bullets, silver bullets, as a result of this, and that leads to their second problem, which their teams are having increasing number of security tools, controls that are hard to configure, hard to manage, hard to monitor, and they're not really designed to play nice together. And if you think about a security operations center monitoring firewalls and EDRs and DLP and all these different security controls by the individual vendors, the vendors themselves don't really build them in a way to make them part of a ecosystem, and I think the key word here is a system. Then if you overlay the skills gap in terms of, you know, not having the skills around, we've talked about cloud, transition to cloud, organizations and partners are struggling around getting those resources, hiring those resources, retaining those resources. And we're predicting a sort of a 3.5 million open jobs in the cybersecurity field by 2025. And then what's making it even worse for customers, especially in the financial services and insurance markets, critical national infrastructure, that their regulators and their auditors and their boards are getting a lot more technically savvy, and obviously cybersecurity is raising up to be a board level issue. And as I said in talking with Daniel as part of the panel just now in the keynote, it's not a question of what you know or what your customers know, it's what your customers can prove. And how do they prove and answer these difficult questions that the board are sort of leveling at them? You know, how secure are we? How effective are our controls? Can data be exfiltrated? Can we be ransomed? Can we be hacked? Where should we invest next? How do we measure those investments? How do we justify more budget by showing that we've got gaps? I mean, Anomaly just showed their heat map for MITRE, showing all the risks and gaps where controls potentially are not available. And then how do we move to the cloud more securely? And then finally, how do we deal with the threat of the day, the latest vulnerability? Should we pull the cables out of the wall and stop operating, or can we go on safely? And these are the kind of questions that the CISOs face. Now, if you think about the CISO's role, and I think a lot of CISOs have forgotten this, their role is to design, build, and operate an agile, effective, and efficient security program to repel threats from their organization. It's not about capabilities. It's not about building a SOC. It's not about outsourcing that SOC to a partner providing services. It's not about installing EDR. It's about doing all of those things and building a system and overlaying the people and the processes that defend that organization. And sometimes customers get wrapped up around the axle on these capability projects and forget about the bigger picture. The challenge with that bigger picture, as I mentioned in the keynote, is that in 82% of breaches, the security controls were available to stop the breach, but they failed. So what we're seeing is security controls fail often, security controls fail broadly, and security controls fail silently. And what this results in is there's no feedback loop in cybersecurity to tell us that our tools are failing, and for that matter, our cybersecurity program's failing. If you can't make a phone call, you know your mobile phone's not working. If you can't receive an email, you know your email's not working. If your EDR is set to monitoring mode and not protection in some instances, depending on the configuration, you don't know until you find out that you've got a problem or you become a headline. So Attack IQ is building that decision support system for customers. And this is very interesting to CISOs because it's never been done before, where you test security controls at scale in production and use that telemetry to tell an organization, what's working, what's not working, where should they invest next, and answering all of those questions. But more importantly, giving the CISO evidence that tells them exactly where they're at in their cybersecurity program and their posture and their resiliency and their readiness. And that's enormously valuable to CISOs. And you saw in the IDC presentation, it's all about digital transformation. It's all about the CISOs making that transition to the cloud. And this feedback loop is becoming critically important to that journey. So Attack IQ as a company, we provide a security optimization platform. You might hear traditional terms where the space came from, breach and attack simulation, which was really where it started out. Think of breach and attack simulation like Oracle. Oracle used to make a database. Okay, but then they got that data and they went, oh, that data's interesting. We could use it for financial services. So they built a financial services application, and then ultimately they built an ERP platform. So we started out in breach and attack simulation, but now we've built an ERP platform. So we still do that core function of a database, or in our case, breach and attack simulation, but we also do the ERP for cybersecurity, in as much that we are the industry's most sort of scalable testing platform. But the key here is that we're designed to test in production at scale. We are part of the MITRE Ingenuity organization that now is responsible for MITRE ATT&CK, and I'll come on to that later. So MITRE ATT&CK is just spread throughout the fabric of everything that we do. And we have the broadest and deepest content in our market that's aligned to MITRE. We're an open, transparent system. So like MITRE, we're sharing all of our tradecraft with the industry to help that skills shortage and that skills gap by helping everybody and giving them a leg up by showing them exactly what we do in every test, so that the people, A, can validate that's okay to do in production, but B, that their teams can learn from it. And we have blueprints where we've captured best practice from existing customers to help new customers achieve those outcomes more rapidly, faster return on investment and at a lower total cost of ownership. We, in terms of MITRE, the MITRE Ingenuity organization, the CETID, the Center for Threat Informed Defense, is really focused on two things: driving state of the art, which is the technology, and then driving state of the practice, which is the people in the process. So Attack IQ's vision is to support, not just focus on selling technology and services and everything that supports that, but really focus on helping organizations develop the practice internally and partners to support that, so that that they can achieve the vision from the MITRE Ingenuity. So community as part of driving that practice is huge. And one of the word wall today was talking about profitability. It was talking about competitive differentiation, all of these things. Well, how we've differentiated from the market is, we created an academy, which was a free training institute coming up 24 months ago. And within that time, we've now got 30,000 students from 180 countries. So a lot of this is to do with our do good work that we're doing with the MITRE organization, which I said I'm going to come on to. And so we're part of that community, and we have our Informed Defenders community as well, which is a subset of the academy. And that's where we have C-level executives from the likes of Bupa in the UK, Dropbox, Toyota, Credit Suisse, and so forth. And so that gives us our executive level content to help educate the C-level in terms of best practice. And then we have our Purple Hats conference coming up. It's on I think it's the 21st of May. You're all welcome to join that. And then finally, we have complementary services that support this methodology and how we go to market. So in terms of what we actually do with this platform from a capabilities and outcomes perspective, this is quite a wordy slide, but as I said, at the sort of giving the Oracle reference, the database end, which is our digital hygiene where we start, we typically start off by helping customers do more advanced, more scientific, more evidence-based, more scalable red team, blue team, and purple team. That quickly leads into testing that their controls are communicating with their SIM. And so we not only test prevention at the control level, making sure that the adversarial activity that we emulate in the live production environment to test the controls is prevented, we also have APIs into the security technologies to make sure our activity has been detected. Then that leads into detection engineering. It's very hard. I've got a 20-year SIM background, and it's very hard to test SIMs with their alarms. So we do that. And then a lot of organizations are going through a transformation around their EDR, their XDR, their SIM, and they want to bake off the vendors, or they want to baseline them once they're installed to make sure that they're configured properly. Then we start to move up the food chain. to more advanced threat hunting and remediation. MSSP partners such as yourselves, customers want to now start to test your capabilities. And in fact, MITRE are not only going to do vendor adversarial emulations, their intention is to do MSSP adversarial emulations. And so this is something that we do to help our customers baseline their partners and bake them off during a selection process. Aramco is an investor in our company, and their big reason for investing was supply chain, clearly one of the biggest risks out there at the moment. So supply chain, digital hygiene assessments is important as well. ISS, the facilities management company out of Denmark, is a public case study for Attack IQ. They use Attack IQ because they're a 430,000 employee organization growing by acquisition. So they put us in to test their acquiring companies to make sure their digital hygiene is adequate before they bring them into the big company. And then there's a lot of transition to Microsoft's E5 licensing program. So we help with the bake-offs and the baselining in there. And then we start to focus on state of the practice, which is the analysts, help test their capabilities. If the SOC has never seen an APT in progress, how are they supposed to detect one when it's live? So we can conduct those exercises. And then you'll hear a lot about MITRE ATT&CK historically has been very atomic testing based, meaning a single tool, technique, and procedure. Whereas if you want to exercise, we've got CrowdStrike on the call today. If you want to exercise a more advanced platform like CrowdStrike that has behavioral analytics in it, AI and ML type capabilities, you need to give the test has got to be much more comprehensive. You've got to use what's called think of a kill chain. It's called a flow or a path now by MITRE. And so we need to be able to test these more advanced capabilities. And then using this telemetry, and this is where the platform becomes valuable to CISOs, they can look at control rationalization. Now, if we talk about one of our big customers in the UK, which again is a public reference, Bupa, who's a health insurance provider, run private hospitals, dental practices, private health insurance. They're using Attack IQ to better quantify and qualify their risk, improve their cybersecurity posture, strategy, and readiness. They're using purple teaming as the operational capability to go about doing the testing and validation, and then using Attack IQ as the nervous system for their evidence-based feedback to tell them how the program's progressing, what's working, what's not working, where do they need to invest, and so forth. Just a very high level, MITRE dashboard within Attack IQ. We have assessments covering all the latest threats and vulnerabilities and baseline templates for the likes of CrowdStrike and the Microsoft and all the EDR vendors. And, we partnered with the likes of Anomaly that came before us on this call. So within Westcon, we work very synergistically with the Westcon Next Generation Solutions Group. I just wanted to finish on the MITRE ATT&CK, the Center for Threat Informed Defense, where MITRE ATT&CK now lives. And as you can see, Attack IQ is a founding research partner of the CTID. So we fund and provide resources for all the research projects. So the FIN6 adversarial emulation plan, we either funded, provided resources, or provided free training in our academy, which I'm going to come on to in a moment. The menu pass, we help with the cloud rationalization. We were part of the Azure Security Stack Mappings project. We're part of the AWS Security Stack Mappings project. And then the mapping of the CVEs, the Common Vulnerability Exposures, or the IOCs, to MITRE ATT&CK. We also were involved in, and then finally, the NIST 853 R4 mapping, which was the high-level GRC framework to MITRE. But you can go to the Center for Threat Informed Defense and look at all these projects, but Attack IQ brings those capabilities into our platform, but more importantly, into our free training academy that you're all welcome to join. And you can take any courses, whether it be operationalizing MITRE ATT&CK, purple teaming, breach and attack simulation. We've released a number of books, dummies guides on purple teaming, breach and attack simulation, and you'll see that there's training going beyond the MITRE, what was traditionally the single TTPs, to moving into flows and paths and doing that advanced kill chain analytics. And then finally, from a resources perspective, please go to Attack IQ's website or attend our academy. And I know that Westcom are running a little bit behind, so that's 2.5 minutes. Back to the agenda, and I just want to thank Westcon, thank the team, and if there's any questions, please let the team at Westcon know, and I'll be happy to answer them. So thank you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Ross. Again, spot on. Very interesting insight, especially about the decision support system, which is automated at the TechIQ, and we had a lot of discussion about MITRE. So next on the line, our dear value partner CrowdStrike, Zeki Toredo, is on the line. So I'll just give it to you. And again, thanks, Ross, for giving us 2 minutes back. And Zeki, up to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much to the Westcon team for having CrowdStrike here today. For those who do not know who CrowdStrike are, we build a security platform, so protecting organizations from today's cyber threats, from your endpoints, your cloud environments, you name it, we protect it. But what I want to do today is I want to talk about an acronym that you're probably hearing way too often, and you're probably asking yourself, what on earth does it actually mean? So XDR. So today I'm going to talk about what it is, what it isn't, and what it should be. So when you're helping your organizations, you're helping your customers, what it actually means and what right solutions are best for them. So we've got a very, very packed agenda. First of all, what XDR is, what XDR isn't, and what XDR should be. So let's get started. Let's look past the marketing hype. So first of all, it's great to always look at an analyst definition. There's actually been some research around this, such as Forrester and IDC, as well as Gartner, doing some preliminary analysis into their understanding of what XDR actually is. We could typically boil it down to 3 core areas: native, hybrid, and security analytics. So native is basically technologies bringing in their own native tools and functionalities to provide an XDR capability. Hybrid would be where a solution is able to work with third parties or partners to bring data in. And then security analytics is basically an analytical platform that's sucking up all the data and providing some type of visualization or an analytical front end to that data set. Now, there's actually some more down in depending on which analyst you're talking to, such as managed XDR and so forth. But pretty much all the analysts agree on native, hybrid, and security analytics. Now, I think it's also good to remember the problem statement. Why are we looking at new technologies like XDR? Well, first of all, I think we all know the threat landscape is getting even worse. We're dealing with more and more sophisticated attackers, be it criminal organizations looking to steal confidential data, intellectual property, and take organizations to ransom. But the conflict between Russia and Ukraine also brings real geopolitical tensions that actually also seep into the cyber domain that really takes a big risk at all of our organizations and all of our customers. We talked about digital transformation, and I know this has been talked about already this morning. All of our customers have a cloud-first strategy. They also have a remote working first strategy. This is great for our customers, but it actually brings huge amounts of complexity when it comes to securing those brand new environments, be it cloud or hybrid or so forth. And lastly, concerningly, we're dealing with more vulnerabilities. Probably, just a few years ago, we were dealing with, maybe one critical vulnerability every few months. We're dealing with, 20, 50 of these critical vulnerabilities nearly every single day. Our teams, the organizations, are not made to deal with that vast amount of vulnerabilities. So this is where we are. And really, when we're looking to trying to solve it with XDR, it's about leveraging all of that brand new data. We create so much telemetry in our organizations. Those new cloud platforms, those SaaS platforms, all create data that can help us to identify security threats. And of course, once we have that data, we need to actually identify those incidents, correlate that information together. And lastly, a big element we always forget about, it's not just identifying problems in our network, in our organization. We actually have to respond to them as well, to remediate them, clean up the incident as quickly as possible. Now, the way we've kind of perceived to solve this issue is about collecting all the data. Historically, we always thought if we collect all the information, surely when we have time, we can go back through that data and find the problem. And we had this elegant solution where we would create what we call the data pond. We'll get all of our logs and throw it into the data pond, and surely we'll have plenty of time to go back through this information, threat hunt for this data, and find these incidents when we have time. Very quickly, we became this data lake, but the reality is it was more like a data dump. We're taking huge amounts of this data, but we're not actually making any use to it. And this is actually where we end up with what we call a data problem. Everything we do, even in security, has a cost to it. So if we're collecting huge amounts of information, that has a cost. We have to store it. We have to water it. We have to feed it. If we've got so much data and we're trying to search across this information, there's extra cost in trying to find that data, because maybe the more data we have, the slower our ability to search across it. But also with that, we're spending huge amounts of effort and time in trying to actually get this data plugged in. So if we're really just collecting all the data, we're actually wasting resources, be it money, time, and effort. And what we want to make sure is we're doing, really collecting the right data for the right reasons. And this allows us to have efficiencies when it comes to actually looking into that data. And really, the reality is the right data is more important than all the data. But interestingly, more data in some cases becomes and allows us to introduce more relevance or usefulness. So when we have the right data added to other information, contextualized, adds more relevance or usefulness. But lastly, we always have to remember the wrong balance will actually decrease our outcomes. It's about making sure we can do all that pre-work to make sure we've got the right combination of both. So I want to give you an example. And this is actually how EDR vendors really solve the data problem. The first rule of building an EDR solution is don't build a log collector. And what we did was we actually, kind of break it out into two segments. We've got always useful signals and sometimes useful signals. What that basically means is we have these two different pieces of information. So maybe a process rollup. A process rollup or process execution is always going to be useful. The reason why it's always useful is because we always want to make sure when a new process is seen, we're looking at it, identifying it. Is it bad? Is it good? But also we want to store this information because it's not just useful for identifying, malicious things. It's also good for maybe application control, understanding what kind of applications are running in our environment. So that data is going to be always useful. Now, sometimes useful, for example, a registry change. Now, we don't want to collect every single registry change on an endpoint because it actually happens way more often than you actually think. It's a bit noisy, to be realistically. So we don't want to have it all because it's just going to be way too much information. But it's still a really important piece of data when dealing with security incidents. But in those cases, it's usually when something has happened before. So, for example, a PowerShell process has launched and called out, command and maybe ran some type of binary file in memory. Something's happened in the stages before the registry change. Then it becomes an interesting piece of information. And this is where we start taking in this idea of smart logic into how we collect data. So it's not just about collecting all the information, it's about collecting the right information at the right time. And this is where we come to XDR. And XDR is really an evolution of EDR, taking the exact same idea we had from endpoint detection and response, but really extending it to looking into all the other data sets and data formats. So there's a number of questions I normally ask if I was looking for an XDR solution. And it's really come around a couple of basic rules. What data is it actually looking at? Does the data get collected, stored, or queried? What kind of integrations do they have? Is it configurable, or does it work out of the box? And is it on-premise or cloud-based? I also would look at a few key elements of what XDR isn't. And again, this is where we start getting a lot of confusion. Some vendors say, XDR is endpoint and network data. No, it's not. The X is about extending to all data sources. For example, we see organizations say it's a SIM solution with endpoint data. No, it's really not. We're removing ourselves and having our abilities. And the same with EDR or log management or SIM and SOAR does not equal XDR. Remember, it's about extending the full detection and response. So, what should XDR be? So again, we kind of boil it down to those, always useful signals, or sometimes useful signals. But what we're doing is actually extending even further into looking into other kind of extra capabilities of bringing extra information into the environment. So take the first step. First of all, we're now looking at any data event. So be it cloud, identity, network, third-party, threat intelligence, internally sourced, externally sourced. Again, the core element of XDR is that X, the extended data set we're looking into. Next, again, we have that, always useful signals, sometimes useful signals, but it's not just process roll-up information anymore, registry changes. It's identity information, such as users logging into identity sources, be it Active Directory physically, or maybe even, a cloud identity service. And then we have this new option, relevant, but rarely useful. Now, hold on for a second. You're probably thinking, what are you talking about? We also understand that in our organizations, we have huge amounts of data that we're collecting or creating, but it's not always useful to us. And what I mean by that is a great example is firewall or network information. Now, an IP address or a domain isn't a great indicator of an attack. It is in a very short window of time, but let's say, intelligence, unfortunately, can get old and stagnated. And what once was a domain name used by an attacker is no longer being used and is just a legitimate website once more. So we wouldn't start a whole incident response investigation because maybe we flagged the domain up as being maybe suspicious. We want more context into it. So we're not going to start a whole IR investigation because of a single indicator, but network information, domain information can be really useful in contextualization with an incident we're already investigating. So something that has a lot more context or more behavioral aspect to it, having that extra context. And again, this is where we come back to relevant but rarely useful. There's so much information being collected in our environments that, again, is so low fidelity, we wouldn't want to create all detection methodology off it. But it's such good data when we already know an attack is actually happening to provide context, visibility, and again, the information necessary for us to make the right next steps in our IR process. And lastly, it has to be done through a single user console. We kind of always laughed in the industry about the single pane of glass, but today we need it. We've got too many different applications, too many different pieces protecting our organization. And unfortunately, way too many incidents and way too many threats happening to our organization. It is time for the single pane of glass. And the great thing about XDR is its job is to be able to pull the right information, the right data, and orchestrate and synchronize the detection and response part of it as well. So there we have it, evolving EDR to XDR. Again, this is something that we're doing here at CrowdStrike, and feel free to go to our crowdstrike.com blog where we've got a lot more details and the demonstrations and how we're actually incorporating this on top of our platform. But I hope I gave you some good ideas, some good points on what XDR actually is, and answered a few queries or questions you may have on the technology. Have a great time, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Zeki. Wow, giving us time back, and it was very insightful. I like the idea of talking about what XDR is and what XDR isn't, and especially how you evolve the data problem. So thanks a lot. We appreciate your time. So next in the line is Steve Johnson from our partner Ruckus. So I will just give the stage to you, Steve.
Hi, thank you very much for that. And good morning, everybody, or good afternoon as it is now, everybody. So I am Steve Johnson. I'm the Region Director for North and East Europe for Ruckus Networks. And I want to take a few moments this afternoon to introduce Ruckus Networks, if you don't know who we are and you haven't worked with us previously, but also to highlight a particular part of the portfolio that's making a huge difference to our customers today. So who is Ruckus? If you don't know Ruckus and you haven't worked with us previously, we're a partner-centric organization that delivers networks that are purpose-built for the world's most challenging environments. We've evolved over the last 15 plus years, nearly 20 years now, starting as a relatively small startup Wi-Fi specific company that's grown its portfolio, and we'll visit the portfolio in just a moment, to expand right the way across data networks. The key word that I really want to draw your attention to here is partner-centric. So just about every product, software or service that we sell is sold through our partner channel, through a two-tier channel involving distributors like Westcon. And in terms of our partner community, everything from the largest systems integrators, global integrators in the world, service providers, right the way through to vertical specialist partners, and even proximity partners down into the SME and the SMB space as well. In terms of the customer base that we best serve, the markets where we have the highest market share are listed here. I mean, our customer base is very varied with all kinds of customer types. But if you have heard of Ruckus, you will probably have seen Ruckus being deployed in one of these marketplaces. Hospitality and education are two markets where the most important outcome is the experience that the user has when they connect. Education from a learning point of view, it doesn't matter whether it's a small child in a primary school or students in higher ed environments. And hospitality, it doesn't matter whether you're staying in a 5-star luxury hotel or resort, or whether you're on a lower cost business centric hotel. That the ability to connect is the absolute priority, and Ruckus is very often chosen in those markets for that reason. We also service government, all kinds of government, from local to central, including military and Ministry of Defense type organizations. We are very commonly used in stadium and large venues, large museums, theme parks, areas where the density of the people connecting is a real challenge. And probably the fastest growing market that we work in at the moment is one that we call MDU, multi-dwelling unit, which can be anything from a student accommodation, a set of dormitories, can be military barracks, can be campsites in some cases, which are evolving into the highest levels of connectivity. Probably the fastest growing is the build to rent market in terms of new construction of apartment blocks and residences along those lines. So a quick look at the portfolio. This is the only product slide necessarily that I'll be showing today. We, as I said, started many years ago. 2004, Ruckus was set up predominantly as a Wi-Fi specialist vendor. And it was originally designed, and the architecture of the technology and the access points was originally designed to meet a serious challenge that was facing everybody in those days. If you're as old as me, you'll remember this, which is how do we get real-time traffic, whether that's voice or video, working effectively across Wi-Fi. So back in those days, Wi-Fi was very much a best efforts type technology, which you could more or less use, and it would be acceptable and convenient if it was managing email incoming or something where any kind of lag or delay wasn't much of an issue. Video and voice, of course, that would be a major challenge, leading to jitter and an unsuccessful connection. So the technology that Ruckus built uniquely back then remains the core differentiator in terms of our Wi-Fi platform. We've got a complete range of access points, outdoor, indoor, the specialty wall plate AP, which is very popular in both MDU, but also the hospitality environments, where you're deploying much smaller APs on a per room basis. In terms of the switching portfolio, that's a lot newer to Ruckus, although the portfolio itself and the technology behind it is not new. So it came to Ruckus as a result of our acquisition by a company called Brocade. And Brocade themselves were using technology that came many years ago from a company called Foundry Networks. And that core operating system technology is what remains at the heart of the Ruckus switching portfolio today. And across the portfolio, we have technology, everything from 1 gig edge devices, including multi-gig, so 2.5 and 5 gig edge ports for the higher end access points or other devices, CCTV cameras that might need to connect to that. And it goes all the way through up to the large stackable core devices in the 7850 range, which include 40 gig and 100 gig technologies. The way it's laid out on the slide is a little bit old-fashioned: access, aggregation, and core. We don't really see that architecture or that design very commonly these days. It's typically an access layer into a very high-density core that we see being deployed. In terms of the management of the portfolio, we've got kind of every flavor that you would expect an enterprise vendor to have these days. Whether it's the appliance, either physical, so the appliance in the box, or virtual, where you would buy the software and run it in your own server or data center environment, which is a direct management of the infrastructure that sits underneath it. And one of the uniques around Ruckus is our ability to multi-tenant the virtual appliance. It's one of the key reasons that so many managed service providers these days, or partners looking at moving into managed service provision, choose to use us because they're able to set up the core infrastructure and then distribute their services against multiple different customers. Delivering a similar function, of course, is the cloud platform. And the cloud platform is probably the fastest growing of the appliances, in particular since we introduced the managed service provider component into that as well, which sits very neatly with the dominant portfolio of our partners across Europe and EMEA, as well as having a controllerless plug and play option for smaller sites and smaller buildings. The IoT platform is a controller that plugs into the appliance and manages essentially IoT networks and the transmission of IoT networks across the Wi-Fi and the Ethernet switching infrastructure. We have a comprehensive software layer as well. And in particular, there's a part of this that I really want to spend a little bit more time going into detail with you today, which is the Ruckus Analytics platform. It's relatively nascent. It's a couple of years old. We released it a couple of years ago. And before I dive into the product and what it does, I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the reasons that it was built and why it feels like it's so relevant to our customers today. So it's quite a statement. Networks are now too complex for normal humans. I don't know what they mean actually by normal humans to manage effectively. And if we step back and just think about that for a moment, you need to ask the question, why? I mean, Ethernet is still pretty much Ethernet. And from a Wi-Fi point of view, 802.11 is still pretty much 802.11. And there are some components of it, of course, that evolve and the technology evolves, but the foundational technology remains the same across both of those. So what is it that's making networks so complex today? And the answer to that is it's everything else. It's the environment that those networks are designed to enable and manage and connect. Now, whether that's the number of people connecting, the number of devices, the types of devices, the number of applications, the types of applications, the locations that the devices are connecting from, whether it's a human connection or whether it's machine-to-machine traffic, having just spoken about the IoT component of this. It's that environment that is constantly changing. And it leads to one of the biggest challenges we find that most customers have in terms of the return on investment and the total cost of ownership of investing in a network, in that the customer can have a new network put in today and it's perfect. It's because it's designed exactly for the environment that it's supposed to be supporting today. As that environment changes and as time goes on, that's when we start to see problems occurring, because the network isn't able to stretch and the management of the network becomes more and more complicated, the more sophisticated and the more change there is in the environment. So for a year or 2 years, the network works perfectly, but then the problems start to happen and the help desk tickets start to increase and the troubleshooting time takes longer and to a point where the most sensible option is for the organization to refresh and upgrade, be forced to refresh and upgrade the network that they've already invested in. The main problems that come from this at a practical level are around the amount of troubleshooting time that network professionals are required to spend. And an awful lot of that is, of course, reactive, because most of the time, or a lot of the time, the people managing the network don't know there's a problem until there is a problem. So they're immediately in a reactive mode and trying to play catch up as a result of some help desk ticket that may, or red light that's gone on, an alarm that's come from the network. And absolutely number one, consistently in terms of the area that causes the majority of the problems is Wi-Fi. And the reason for that is it's very, very hard to troubleshoot because of the amount of interference and the huge variety of things that could be making a difference. So what do we do about this? Well, this statement came from a couple of years ago at the same time that we released Ruckus Analytics. And it suggests that it's not going to be down to people to fix these problems, is the key message here. It has to be machines. It needs to be machine learning and artificial intelligence that allows networks to become more automated, to provide you with advice on the tuning that's required across the network, how to make the network more efficient and more adaptable to the changing environment that it's working in, and how to fix itself more quickly. And that's the reason that we built Ruckus Analytics, exactly to address that problem. So what is it? It's a cloud-based software platform that is a component of a number of different features that are listed here, that allows a customer or a managed service provider deep insight into what's actually going on the network at any given point in time. It works across both the Wi-Fi and the Ethernet switching. So we treat the network as a single entity these days. And it provides information that allows the networking team, whether it's the managed service provider or the customer themselves, to undertake a number of key activities and gain insight into a number of key areas of the network. So the first is it will give you advice. So you set the network up in the way that it works perfectly. You set a number of SLAs across the network in terms of what it needs to deliver to who or to what at any given point in time or at any given location. And it manages those SLAs for you. So if it sees, for example, that one of the SLAs is at risk for a particular device, person, area of the network, time of day, whatever it might be, it starts to introduce the idea that you're stretching that SLA to you immediately. What does this allow you to do? It allows the network team essentially to constantly tune the network and retune the network. So it's an avoidance of a problem before the problem actually happens. It gives you notice and it will give you advice about how to undertake fixing that problem. The second thing it allows you to do is troubleshoot very, very quickly. It gives you immediate insight. It will packet trace the connection. Even on a Wi-Fi connection, it will packet trace the connection, leading to a really significant reduction in troubleshooting time and the amount of time being invested in it. And the final thing it does, I mean, it does a whole load of sub things, as you can see listed here. I'm just boiling it down into the key denominators. The final thing it does is it will allow you to report on this. So whether you're the end user and a networking team or an IT team, or whether you are the managed service provider, it essentially gives you evidence to allow you to prove your innocence. So many things and accusations are thrown at the network in terms of the network's underperforming, or there's problems with this, and it's the network's fault that we can't connect, or a particular application isn't running. It will allow you the opportunity to provide reports that show you that that's not the case, that the network is absolutely fine and it's behaving exactly as expected and it's delivering the service level that it was expected to do. So I'm not going to go into lots of detail about all of these things. It's too complex to try and address in 20 minutes, let alone the few minutes that I have left. What I would ask is that anybody that has an interest in this, or working with Ruckus, or sells into the verticals in particular that I highlighted earlier, please get in touch with the guys at Westcon. They'd be delighted to address your questions, or give you demonstrations, or talk you through in more detail Ruckus Analytics or any part of the portfolio, and certainly make introductions into Ruckus ourselves, so that we can have deeper conversations about what your interest in some of these technologies might be. The outcome, anyway, from deploying Ruckus Analytics, and the feedback that we've had from our customers is this. The first is that you actually improve the experience of the user. And it doesn't matter whether that user is, a student, a worker, a guest, a visitor, whoever that a user is, they get an improved experience through using the network. And that's tied to the fact that there is far less unplanned downtime, because it gives you the opportunity to see these problems before they happen and make adjustments. The second is that the troubleshooting, especially Wi-Fi troubleshooting, can or has been previously measured in hours. And sometimes, I've seen cases in my career and in other organizations I've worked in where it can be days to get to the bottom of something, because you're waiting for a problem to reoccur and capture the packet data. And the troubleshooting using Ruckus Analytics is now able to be measured in minutes. It cuts the troubleshooting time remarkably, which is great, alongside the fact that the actual help desk tickets start to arrive in a trickle. Regardless of the time that the investment has been made and the network's been there, the amount of help desk tickets is reduced very significantly. And finally, the ability of the IT resource or the managed service provider to be able to provide proof of their innocence, as I said. And what this means is we've gone from this environment that I highlighted earlier, where networks are too complex for normal people to be able to manage them. And that being as a result of this incredibly complex environment that the network is supposed to be serving, to a point where the network is completely modern and up to date. And as a result of that, the investment has a far greater longevity and less of a need to refresh on a shortened and more regular basis. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks a lot, Steve. So that was very interesting. And as you all can see by the clock, thanks for all the presenters to being on time. We appreciate that. Again, great insights, and it's very, very great to have you all guys on our portfolio. We're very relieved. Agenda will continue in the auditorium. I think the next topic will be some more awards. So from my perspective, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for all the time. Thanks a lot for the presenters. And as I said before, if there are any questions, please reach out. We will try to answer it at the best we could. So this was it. Thanks a lot for participating. I say goodbye and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye-bye.